So today's a special day. I am merging my two passions, my two projects into one place, one location. Of course, it's not going to feel that different on YouTube, but on my Spotify, iTunes, my podcast sites, it's going to feel a little bit new. And that is the combination of My Modern Myth and Rolling Reflections into My Modern Myth Rolling Reflections Edition. I know it's a radical concept and a brilliant naming convention, but that's what it is. And what that means, I'm going to get into my reflection, my rolling reflection, which is from the most recent Jujitsu class. And that's going to center around skill acquisition and this process of being dedicated, patient, and accepting all of the frustrations that come with it, and then elevating your game and elevating your life. And that's not just jujitsu, but from the perspective of the show and the perspective of my framework of My Modern Myth, all of these lessons are relative. They're all connected. It's just sport is the primary way that I use my body to write that life story, to learn the lessons and to strengthen this vehicle. And it's how I encourage everyone who I help to go about doing it in their own way. I don't recruit everyone into jiu-jitsu, but I do want to demonstrate, even if you're not in jiu-jitsu, how you can use sport and look at whatever it is that you're doing, running, biking, weightlifting, as a way to further that process of writing the best life story possible, because we do have to move and stimulate our minds and our bodies. So Rolling Reflections is always going to be more focused on jiu-jitsu, whether it's an interview with another practitioner or just these maybe shorter rolling reflections of my own, but they will be connected to the philosophy and application of My Modern Myth in the spectrum of how we're using our body and exercise to further that journey of life that we are on, which is growth and service and all of the wonderful human needs that we can meet and use to deal with the frustrations, the pains of our life, instead of suppressing, avoiding, and overcompensating through maybe unhealthy behaviors. So today, this is a painful lesson. This is one that I've been working through for a while, and it's this idea of skill acquisition and how we go about doing it. Because in the mental health field, in coaching, when it's related to mental health, when it's related to mental blocks or mindset, is really difficult. Because to change behavior and thought patterns, it's not up to the coach, it's not up to the therapist, it's up to the person to receive the information, to take action. And to take action on something, you have to really want it. You have to really understand why you need it. What are the death stakes in a movie? It's the same thing in our life where I have to change. It's not I want to change, it's I have to. And nobody can get you there. They can inspire you, but only if you're open in that moment. And so this sequence of events, this skill acquisition cascade, is a form of grief. And it's strange to say that because you wouldn't think of progress as grief, but grief isn't just the loss of loved ones and that outpouring of sadness. It's related to something not turning out the way you hoped it would, and then accepting through this process of emotion and frustration and accepting the reality of your situation, that this isn't possible, but this is, or I want this and I have to do this to get here. And I was just hoping that I was naturally gifted or that it would take me 5 months and I would understand it. It's a call to grief, to let go of your expectation and what you had hoped would be the reality and accept the new path. And nobody can do that for you. You have to do it for yourself. And this process really came to a head last night at class. So I've been practicing jiu-jitsu for almost a year. November 17th, it'll be 1 full year, but I've really done 8 months on the mat. I've had a lot of time off the mat, even a sequence of a couple months where I really didn't roll or train. So my first year is coming to a close. And am I amazing? No. Am I better than I was when I started? Yes. Is it easy for me to lose sight of that and to feel like I'm not? 100%. So that's what these reflections also help with, is to recognize there is progress. And sometimes you don't feel progress because all of a sudden you're training with these really good practitioners, these people who are better than you, and you constantly feel less than, and there's nobody who is further behind than you and you're the bottom. And that is really frustrating because you don't see the progress because you're progressing with those people who are already better than you. My first realization of this was when I got to go with a brown belt and they let me work and I could see the game slow down and I could do some things. I could make progress because they were allowing me to work. And I was grateful for that because I was able to say, okay, in absence of proof, I know I have made progress. I just am not to a point where I'm good enough to show that progress based on a given opponent, based on a given move set. But what I did do was go through this process of dedicating myself to a skill set, to a skill acquisition path, which, just for an example, there was this armbar sequence that I learned and really enjoyed. And as you go through anything in life, you're going to find things that work and find things that don't or don't work yet. And it's really important to grab those things that work or that you're really intrigued by and want to incorporate and use that as your focus of dedication. So that's one of the moves. It's a certain, I have someone in my closed guard, I grab arm, I grab shoulder, I work my hips up, and then I'm working towards an arm bar, and there's a few different things that can happen based on what the other person does. I just love that setup because I feel really controlled and it's very appealing to me. So I told myself if I'm in closed guard, I'm dedicated to working that technique, studying that technique every week, and then working it whenever the opportunity presents itself until I get it, and then continue to practice it. And what happens is you dedicate yourself to this. You say, and it's gonna take time, but you start to see like, I'm making the grips. Okay, that's step one. I'm working the hips up, and maybe I'm not executing it, but I'm dedicated to it, and I'm having this patience moment of okay. I know I'm not going to get it, but I'm going to start to find flaws in everything that I'm doing wrong so that I can do it right. And your brain starts to make all these connections like, oh, in this situation, instead of freaking out like you want to do, remember you're dedicated to this movement sequence. And so you slow down and you catch it, and then you make some progress, but then you get frustrated. And that dealing with frustration is where you really get to decide if you're truly going to be dedicated and acquire the skill or not. If you abandon it at that moment of frustration, you miss the mark, because frustration is just your mind's way, your emotional mind's way of saying we need new information. Something has to change because the way we do life in this way is not working. So I get frustrated. That leads me to embracing acceptance or retreat. We get to decide, are we going to retreat and give up, or are we going to accept the reality we're in and continue to re-up and dedicate? And that brings us back to the top of the cascade. We're dedicated, we're patient, we're frustrated, we accept whatever the reality is that we need to accept, and we continue to go forward. That acceptance might look like only dedicating ourselves to the grips until we can always get those grips. That might be dedicating ourselves to understanding through different video sources or talking to higher level practitioners, practicing it on our own, not just in live sparring. There's all these things that we can rededicate to and then get that patience, frustration, and acceptance. And I had this moment where last class, I finally got it to work. But the reason that it was great and that, this game evolves over time and it continues to surprise you is because not that I got the armbar. It's the way I got it. Did the technique, grab, start to work my hips back, get my, hips up, legs onto the shoulder, and I'm in armbar position. I'm losing it. I'm adjusting, getting to the side, changing my angle, getting my legs back in position. I've got the arm, and now I'm going to lean back, and I want to swim underneath to turn him. But that only works if they're stacking you. If he's standing up over you trying to press down, then you have a gap to go through. But I went for that and I had him and I was like, oh, the knee's blocking. So then again, the lesson has been taught to me for 8 months to a year. You can only take what's given to you. You can't just do this one specific move set because the situation is reminiscent of another. If we only act a certain way whenever something is given to us, if I only act in rage when someone disobeys me or fails to meet my expectation, I've missed the mark. If I always shut up when someone disappoints me and doesn't meet my expectation, then I've again missed the mark. We have to look at what's being presented to us and react appropriately. And we can only react appropriately if we start to recognize the situation for what it is. He was kneeling. I can't get my hand, I can't swim under to invert, so I'll switch to the armbar. From here, oh, I can do that from here because I don't need to do anything else. I already did the move. That swim under was only if I get stacked. So if I'm not dedicated to that movement sequence, I don't get to see it play out in all of these different ways, and I don't give my brain a chance to make new pathways to make sense of a situation. So I don't change my vision, and I'm not aware. And this is not just jujitsu. This is every time in life. When I coach people, I always say that. You are going to screw this up, but you're starting to gain awareness. You're starting to change the vision around these moments of stress that you get into, and you have these big emotional reactions, and you're controlled by those emotions. The first step is recognition and awareness after that mistake, and I say mistake because it's something you didn't want to do. But it's a flow of events. We only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know, and we have to learn to start to become aware of what we don't know and what we have to do to become knowledgeable, to gain insight, and to change the vision. So that reflection is really powerful to me because I left the gym being proud of myself for hitting the arm bar finally and accepting that doesn't mean I'm always going to do it, but it's getting closer. It's getting closer. And my coach was talking about how, we're doing this mount escape. You're in mount, someone's on you, you're bridging out, and you're creating a gap so you can get your knee through and get to quarter guard, get to butterfly, whatever, re-guard basically. And you do all of this work to get out of the position. And you're there. And all it takes is 1 second to be right back in that position. And you gotta do all this work to get out of that situation. And he made this comment that you can work really hard to build a wonderful marriage for 10 years and then one trip to Vegas and it can all be ruined. Tongue in cheek, obviously, but it's the same kind of principle. It takes a lot of work to get where we are, and it just takes one moment to revert back to who we used to be, to get back in the position of discomfort that we were. And that's anecdotal, but also really important because it will happen. I'm going to go to an armbar. I'm going to get stacked. I'm going to fail to do the sequence, and I'll get my back taken or something, and I'll be in another bad situation. But I'm dedicated to continuing to try. I'm going to try and regard. I'm not going to be pouty because, again, I'm never going to get anywhere because I did all that it took to get to the positive position, to regard, to be calm in this situation, and yet it still didn't turn out the way I wanted to. Well, there's no guarantee that it will work out the way you wanted it to because there's other people involved. My technique might get to a place where I'm just dominating white belts in this one movement sequence. Well, then I go with the blue belt, the purple belt, brown, black, whatever, and all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore because they have more skill acquisition than I do. And my technique is poor compared to them. My conflict resolution skills might be great within this friend group, but I take it to this person who doesn't care about me, and then all of a sudden I have to guard myself because I want to get fighty. I want to get angry because I'm feeling unheard and disrespected. Well, just because I'm calm in this situation doesn't mean I'm calm in this one. I have to be aware, otherwise I'll throw all that progress away. And even if I fail, at least I failed a little less. I didn't put myself in the worst situation. And I think with any skill acquisition, we're going to at least be able to not put ourselves in worse situations. That has to be something we honor because you can't get to the top of the mountain without taking those first steps. So there's an honor principle within that we have to honor, not over-congratulate ourselves, but we have to respect and appreciate those little growth moments within the pain moments. Because it's just like grief. We have to let go of this idea of who we thought we were so that we can become who we're meant to be. So hopefully you can get to a point where you can become dedicated to something because you don't like the way it's going. You can gain a little bit of patience, and that patience will burn out and frustration will hit, and that frustration will call you to acquire new information so you can rededicate yourself through acceptance of where you are to the process cascading down again. It's a cycle. Everything's a cycle. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. We all know this, but it's how we get through those moments that matters. So until next time, journey well, my friends.